Hello, once again I'm Cosmic, and welcome to my first impressions of early access title Shadows Heretic Kingdoms. Now, I don't usually do previews or first impressions, so to speak, on early access titles, but however I have been following Shadows Heretic Kingdoms for some time. Now, Shadows is a top-down isometric action RPG that is being developed by Games Farm and published by Bit Composer Games. Shadows Heretic Kingdoms is the successor to 2004's Cult Heretic Kingdoms, which was also published as Heretic Kingdoms: The Inquisition in North America. The game itself takes place in a time where the Heretic Kingdoms are no longer ruled by anyone. An uneasy peace remains across all races and factions. Now, however, cracks are beginning to emerge, minor fighting has begun, and something more sinister and far more threatening has begun moving in the shadows. Now, ultimately, the game's main character is a demon from the Shadow Realm known as the Devourer. A mysterious cloaked man has summoned you and let you loose upon the world. The cloaked man speaks of a great threat to both him and the demon, but he speaks cryptically and there's much to be answered for the demon. Now, I say ultimately the game's main character is the demon because there is a party system involved. The Devourer can take control of souls. Now, these souls can then be manifested into their bodily form, so essentially they're called puppets in the game. Now, you can change to any one of your control puppets at any time, or switch back to the Devourer. It makes for actually some really interesting gameplay, as you can basically switch to the Devourer, which is in the Shadow Realm, and then switch back to the real physical world into one of your puppets. Now, this creates interesting gameplay in the form of puzzles and fighting. This means that, for example, you can be as the Devourer going through, and if you meet a particularly nasty enemy in the Shadow Realm, you can switch back to the physical realm into one of your puppets and bypass the enemy completely. Vice versa, if you're in the physical realm and you come across a set of stairs that is completely demolished and there's no way of progressing forward, switch to the Devourer to get up the stairs, as he doesn't need physical stairs to move. It does actually present some really interesting gameplay mechanics that I would really like to see expanded in the final version, and I would just like to see the whole thing fully fleshed out to meet its potential. Now, next is the gameplay of the game. So far you get a good taste of the gameplay that does have its issues thus far. First I'm going to talk about combat. Now, combat feels very sluggish, it feels very slow, it feels out of balance, and I think those are all issues that need to take place and need to be fixed ultimately for the game to really be a success, especially in an action RPG that's like Diablo 3, that's like other games in the Diablo series, like other games that are action RPGs. Combat needs to be really good. I don't mind slower paced combat because I've played action RPGs that are too fast and it doesn't even feel like you're hitting anything. But at the same time, there's a difference between slower and sluggish, and the game at the moment, the combat feels very, very sluggish. It feels like sometimes it doesn't hit properly. I think the whole UI design is okay at the moment. I think it does need a little tweaking here and there. I think the reaction time from the mouse to the game, to the character, really does need improving, because it does feel like sometimes the game just doesn't respond to what you're telling it to do. All these things really need looked at. I think the biggest issue for me for the combat is the sluggish feel. That's a real problem. The balancing is a real problem, and because it's quite slower and it has this really sluggish feel to the attacks, it means that if you get grouped with enemies, you're going to go down. It's that simple, because enemies really do hit you hard in the game, especially early on, and it just means that you're going to go down as soon as you get a group of enemies together. It's just better to run and pick them off one by one. I think you can maybe take a max, maybe about 3 enemies at a time, maybe 4 if you're lucky, but more than that, you're really going to struggle to keep your health up. Now, interestingly, speaking about health systems, the way that the health system works is that you can obviously use your traditional herbs and potions to replenish your health or replenish it over time, but you also can, when you kill an enemy, because you are the Devourer, even in your puppet form you are related to the Devourer, you absorb the enemy's souls, and you can acquire a certain amount of souls, and then you can hit spacebar to use souls to replenish your health, and that you just hold spacebar down and it slowly replenishes your health using souls up all the time. Now, the amount of souls that you can hold does increase as you go through the game, and healing through souls is pretty much a base required, especially for tougher fights. Otherwise you are just going to go down in a couple of hits and that's it. Now in the early access at the moment is only the first chapter, and only 2 playable main characters are available, that is sub characters being puppets. The Devourer is obviously always fully playable. So there's about roughly around 7 to 8 hours worth of gameplay in the early access version as it is currently. There are going to be several iterations of the early access version as the game progresses and develops further, but for me the biggest things in the game that I'm most excited about aren't in the early access version. Now the first is crafting. Now crafting, they're going to put in a crafting system that will allow you to combine crafting opponents, break down loot into new items, etc, etc. One thing I'm hoping about the crafting system is that it's really good, 2, that it's pretty deep. I like a good in-depth crafting system, 3, that the craftable items are as good as the loot that you are able to find, that there's going to be rare craftable items, so for example there's going to be rare components and etc. Just I want a really fully fleshed out crafting system, because I really like that in RPGs, and that's one of the reasons I play RPGs, is for the level of customization and for the crafting. So I really hope that there's a good crafting system in the game. The game will also have full voiceover. The early access version at the moment is partially voiced at the beginning with actor Tom Baker, who those people know he's from Doctor Who, and the full version will be fully voiced over, and the voice acting so far has been relatively okay. They're going to be adding more heroes and more puppets with their own subplots and quests. So far the heroes that you can choose in the game as the Devourer's puppets do have their own quest lines, their own personalities, and it's actually really good. I'm quite impressed so far. That's the kind of thing I like more than the main quest. I like lots of side quests, lots of subplots, etc, etc. So that's really good, and you know, at the end of the day it adds to the game's content and increases the playtime, etc, etc. They're going to be added in more additional skill sets and items. There's going to be over 50 maps and locations. They're going to be putting in editor and development tools for players to make player-created content and adventures. There's going to be more bosses, more quests, more skills, obviously, more chapters of the main story. So, I mean, overall at the moment it's looking promising, I have to say. It's not a great game yet. There is issues to be sorted out, and if those, especially with the combat, if those combat issues don't get sorted out, that's going to be a big no-no for me, because I don't think it will just bring on the frustration to the point where I don't want to play it anymore. However, should those issues, gameplay issues, get resolved and ironed out, and on top of a good crafting system, more voiceover, more quests, more characters, I actually can see it becoming a really, really good RPG, and one definitely not to miss. I have to say it's got a lot of potential, it's got a lot of promise. Whether it does actually match up to that potential or not is, still remains to be seen. But however, from what I've played so far, what I can see them trying to go for so far, it definitely does get me excited for the full final version. So if you want to pick it up on early access, you can. It's available now. As I say, you get to play for the first full chapter, and there are, you'll basically be able to get the general idea, and you'll also get the full version upon release. If you don't, if you're not into early access and you don't really like not having the complete game, which I really don't most of the time, just wait and see what happens with the full release. So that is Shadow's Heretic Kingdoms. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Do like, subscribe and leave a comment, and I will see you next time.